What's up, guys? How we doing today? My name is Dan. I'm the Jazz Shepherd. I've been trying to cut back my content a little bit so that people can catch up on all the episodes we've done since March when the lockdown started. I started doing episodes every day. People were really hungry for it. There's something to distract them, and I pretty much just kept going. It was a great distraction for me. I'm going to try to cut back to one every 2 days, maybe one every 3 days. Keep the content fresher, give people time to catch up. And I'll probably start putting some more stuff on my Patreon page for those who want more than what I'm going to give you here on YouTube. I'm still trying to navigate all this. I kind of want to make an episode every day. I like to talk. I like to talk about music and philosophy and the soul and the spirit of all of this. But I also don't want to saturate YouTube with too much content. People can't catch up. People tend to kind of fall off then. So again, some feedback is appreciated here. Help me find that happy medium. I've been asking a little bit, getting some feedback. That being said, 1958, the year in jazz, is coming tomorrow or the day after. I'm excited about it. It's been a great year, 58, and it really kind of propels us into 59 and 60. The changes are becoming more and more rapid. The sounds are becoming more and more divergent. 55, modern jazz has fairly limited scope. 56, Pithecanthropus kicks the door open. 57, we saw all that hard bop explode at Blue Note. I made those two very special episodes on the sound of Blue Note, which 1957 codifies. 57 codifies exactly what the Blue Note sound is. And it's a string of 30 albums that they put out that is just unprecedented. Golden stuff. I'm a huge fan of that Blue Note social conscious connection to the universe. And it's a powerful thing. If anybody doesn't know, that was Faithless. I was just playing kind of a Euro trance group from the UK from the early 2000s. And they have some really socially conscious stuff as well, from a very different vein. Although I've heard some people say that electronic music, EDM, and isn't connected to the blues and black music, but I would beg to differ. House music comes directly out of disco. The producers who made disco just changed the name of it, and it was the underground dance music of the 80s became the house scene in Detroit and Chicago, and then by the 90s, Europe was dominated by dance techno beats, house beats, broken beats. Electronic really takes over the European markets. It never really gets a strong foothold here in America. It stays very much an underground scene, and the dance charts forever were very separate from the R&B hip-hop charts. And there was two different kind of dancing going on. You could go dance to R&B hip-hop, pop music, and pop and R&B became very interwoven in the 90s and early thousands. Backstreet Boys, Beyonce, Britney Spears, it was all very black-driven pop sensibility coming from the blues and Armstrong, and how it was voiced and how it was delivered, how it was spaced. That's all dance music. But electronic music definitely has its roots in a lot of the black traditions as well. Sometimes it's harder to hear some of the stuff today and go, yeah, that comes from the blues. But there's times I listen to dubstep, and I listen to old swing charts, and some of the swing movements are synonymous with what's happening in dubstep. Swirling highs, throbbing lows, mids that are kind of transversing. Dance music's still using a lot of the same things, just different instruments are creating the sounds. But black music definitely is the architecture behind almost all of what we dance to. You know what I mean? Classical music's where you gotta go to say, okay, this isn't coming from black Americans. That's just a fact of the matter. And it shocks me listening to a lot of my classic rock now, a lot of my even heavy metal stuff from my childhood days. I listen to it, and it's so filled with blues riffs basic, simple blues bars that they're ripping off in just a rock and roll sense. But we almost forget how rock and roll was derived from rhythm and blues. And it's the exploitation's been continuous and eternal. It just keeps going on. Today what I want to do real quick is I want to dive into some of my recent purchases. We'll get to 1958 probably tomorrow. I'll broadcast it. I'll probably film it later today or early tomorrow. But I've showed you some of the stuff already, some of my West Coast stuff, and I'll probably re-go through that again because a few more things have shown up. I haven't been buying records at all the last 6 months since the whole thing started with COVID, and I haven't had money. And I got the unemployment through the summer, and I decided on the month of July to buy some stuff for my birthday, which was early August. And I bought probably about 100 records. Some of them are kind of big bulk buys from certain sellers online. But I found some cool stuff. I'm just going to share it with you today, and then we'll move on tomorrow to back to our series. By the way, we're listening to Pinky Winters, and Pinky Winters on Argo 604 was the record I've been looking for the longest. 2 years I never had a chance to even buy one. Finally, an original did show up in Japan for $1,800. I couldn't do that. But then shortly after, one showed up in Europe for a decent price, and I decided to grab it. I've never had a chance to really get an old one. So this is Pinky Winters in the background, and she's wonderful. I want to start with Savoy, and I got a couple of really cool Savoy 10 inches, and they're not by any means in pristine condition, but they certainly sound pretty good after a cleaning on Ken's machine. My friend Ken donated me for my collection this record cleaner down here, and it's certainly been a great way to save old LPs. You can hear the vintage of these recordings. These are probably late 40s. But everything that happens after the war is linked to modern jazz. It's very much part of the same fabric. These recordings are from 47. And some of this does come out on an LP on Savoy 12130, the Nostalgia LP. But this was the 10-inch version of it that came out probably 53, 52. Great stuff. He's a great modern player. Swings hard, rooted in the blues, a lot of modernity. He's really strong as a bebop player. There's the cover, just young Fats doing his thing. Fats passes in 1950, sadly, so he never makes it to the LP era. So you can't really buy an LP by Fats Navarro. That's how it was originally intended to be presented. That just doesn't exist. But you can hear how great a player he was. On his Blue Note sides, on his Savoy sides, you could hear he was a pretty serious young cat. There's a list who he's with here. I don't see a listing on the musicians, but cool to find all the same. And I got it for a decent price because of the cut corner. And to me, it's a great addition. And like you can hear, it sounds great. Yeah, I gave it a good cleaning, and she sounds just fine. With that same purchase, I got a second 10-inch. Excuse me. Excuse me, I had a little cough there. So I got the second 10-inch from the same seller. And this is some early Don Bias stuff on Savoy. There's a little more crackle to this one. The jacket's a little bit dinged up. I gave it a good cleaning, and man, listen to that. Early Savoy stuff, probably recorded in the late 40s again. these backs are tough to make sense of, honestly. They list all these other releases, and it doesn't make it easy to find the one you're looking for. I don't think it's even back there. But something like this, when I can get it for $6, I'm just happy to have it in my collection. Old Don Bias 10-inch. It's not perfect. It's got some flaws. But all the same, I'm happy to have it. And old Savoy 10 inches are just fun. Also on Savoy, I got a record I already had an import of, a Japanese pressing. But I found this Phil Urso. And the guy only wanted a few bucks for it. And it's got some snap crackle to it as well. But he only wanted like $5 for it. It's got Brookmeyer Silver, Percy, Kenny Clark, and a guy by the name of Bobby Banks. So I'll probably most of the time listen to my import and it'll sound perfect. But it's like having the old jackets. You know, I always say an archaeologist can learn as much from a pottery shard as a complete vase. And so I don't mind having some pottery shards in my collection, especially if I already have a great playable imported version. To have an old beat up one, for me it's a piece of treasure. And listen to J.J. Johnson. No, sorry, Bob Brookmeyer. Bob's sounded good there. And again, old Savoys are just so hard to find that I just like having the old versions in my collection to put them up next to the imported ones. Here's an imported version of another Savoy. This is number 12105 or something like that. So it's probably 1957. But again, the recordings are all from the 40s and 50s of J.J. Johnson. And J.J. moves around quite a lot as a young player before he settles into Columbia for a long stretch. I think these come from before his Blue Note recordings. But he's playing with Bud Powell, Cecil Payne, Max Roach, Leo Parker, Hank Jones. Rawls is on some of this, John Lewis, Shadow Wilson. So some pretty good musicians backing him up here on some of these sessions. This is a Japanese Columbia reissue of a Savoy record. How exactly Columbia got to issue Savoy stuff, I'm not quite sure. But again, it's a record that's has always eluded me. And so I decided that this was part of a guy. And how I shop is, I'm always looking for something particular. And when I was doing my saxophone epic, I discovered certain things I needed to have. There was a few records I'm like, oh, I need to get that. I don't have that in my collection. And I kind of do it that way. And I'll look for a copy of the record I'm looking for. And then price is some part of my factoring. But I'm also looking at, okay, what else does this guy have for jazz that I can kind of bundle together, maybe buy 6, 8, 10 pieces that I don't have and fill in some gaps. There's a lot of records I wouldn't go out and buy and pay for the shipping for that record itself. But if I bundle a bunch of stuff together, A, it brings the cost of shipping down. And it allows me to get that record for a limited price. And that's kind of how I get stuff like that. Moving on to Blue Note, I have most of the Blue Note discography. I have all of the 12-inch, 1500, 40, the 4000, up into the Sale of Liberty. I have all that stuff. But there's some 10-inch stuff I don't have, and there's some stuff after the sale on Liberty United Artists that I don't have. And I slowly am picking up some of that stuff. This is an Art Hodes 10-inch. And it's not part of the 5000 series, it's part of the 7000 series. And that was more the Dixieland stuff with the Sidney Bechet's, the George Lewis's. Art Hodes fits in there, of course. He was a fairly famous Chicago Dixieland guy. Was around the Chicago scene a long time. He's got some stuff on Emersy. I think maybe one in Argo as well. But he made a couple of recordings for Blue Note. And it's fun stuff, you know. I always enjoy Dixieland when I hear it. I don't put it on as often maybe as I should. Whenever I do, I'm like, oh, you really hear a lot of the roots of the music and where a lot of the blues comes from. You know, Dixie does seem to do a good job in channeling blues and improvisation and the expression of my soul. Most of you probably have already picked this up, but this is the Just Coolin' record that Blakey had shelved for a long time, and the current iteration of Blue Note Records issued this recently. It's a great session. Morgan, Mobley, Timmons, and Jamie Merritt, along with Arthur Blakey. Fantastic stuff. And I'm sure most of you, like I said, have it. Also on Blue Note, this comes after the sale, $42.98. And this is a great Stanley Turrentine. The rhythm tracks are straightened out and a little bit more R&B than I expected. But there's a couple songs in here with strings that are just amazing, actually. Always something there. Blue Note number 4298. That puts it about 25 releases after the sale, once Liberty has taken over. And they changed the art department. They changed just about everything at Blue Note. This also comes after the sale. It's a record I've meant to pick up numerous times, and I've always kind of either been outbid or just never had a chance to get it at a price I wanted. But this is Grant Green Visions. And Grant's starting to transition a little bit more towards his electronic phase. But I love Grant Green in almost any setting. I prefer his early stuff myself. But again, it's Blue Note number 4,373. That puts it almost 100 albums after the sale to Liberty. So there's been 100 records on Liberty at this point. Probably puts it about 1969. And probably puts it not too far away from the United Artists buyout of Liberty. So Blue Note gets swallowed by Liberty, and then United Artists comes along and swallows up Liberty. There's some great stuff on this. Something I've heard plenty of before, just on Spotify and listening to Grant Green. I love his Pandora station. It's a great kind of mix for when I'm doing stuff I can't be playing vinyl. So I'm pretty familiar with a lot of this stuff. Interesting cover. Again, very far from the Reed Miles era Blue Note, but a piece I'm happy to finally have in my collection. Another thing I picked up was the Thad Jones, Mel Lewis Consummation. I hated the cover. I still don't like the cover, but I love Thad Jones. And this is 8346, which again puts it well into the Liberty era of Blue Note. And this is stuff I'm slowly starting to fill in. And for those of you who know me pretty well, they know that my collection thins out greatly after 1965, 1966, 1967. That's not to say I don't have a lot of Herbie Hancock and Miles Davis and the CTI stuff. I do have a lot of 70s stuff, but I don't have the exhaustive, complete discographies in the 70s that I do in the 50s and the 60s. Now we're going to move on to Prestige. And this is the guy we covered in my saxophone series, and I could have swore I already had this Con Alma record, and it must be one of the ones I've bid on several times and never won. I like Charles McPherson a lot. He's more than just a soul jazz guy. Prestige at this point is very much in the soul jazz tradition, but this is with Clifford Jordan, Barry Harris, George Tucker, and Alan Dawson. And it's a little bit more post-bop modernism than it is soul jazz. Great cover. I love the use of the purple. And I showed you one of his records in the 90s in my sax series. And these two records come right before and after the one I showed you. So I have his three in the 7400, 7500, 7427, 7559. Like the one I have is in between these two. Pat Martino, Lenny McBrown, Cedar Walton, Peck Morrison is on that one. He's a great guy. He's a great player. Like I said, he doesn't really sound like your traditional Prestige soul jazz, of this era. A record I just got is a New Jazz record, 8309. Just came in the mail today, actually. Zoot Sims. And big fan of Zoot. He's one of the great white players of all time. He's heavily featured in my jazz series on the white saxophone players. I have to think that this might be a reissuing of some of Zoot's earlier Prestige stuff, but I'm not positive. Like I said, it just came out. It's from '64, so this actually is probably a current recording. And by look at the band with John Yardley, Phil Woods, I think it's from '64. I think it's a new recording. I never had it. Cuckoo with Phil Woods and John Yardley. It's a great record. I heard it a little bit last night, or this morning actually was, and I'm bringing a little bit of it right now. And you know what you're going to get with Zoot Sims. Nice, big, full tenor. That's what he brings to the table. Another New Jazz record that has eluded me, and New Jazz records are some of the most expensive, elusive records out there. A lot of them weren't reissued very much. OJC omitted a lot of the New Jazz stuff. The Japanese have reissued it, and the expensive, they're high in demand. You know, G.G. Grice stuff, Benny Golson stuff. Just about anything on New Jazz fetches pretty big money. This is Dave Pike, the vibraphone player, Limbo Carnival. He's doing pretty much Latin stuff here. Looking a little bit like a Psychotic Tiny Tim. 82, 84, which should put it about 63. George Duvivier, Ahmad Abdul Malik is on some of this. Ray Barretto, Tommy Flanagan, Jimmy Rainey. Leo Wright actually plays on some of this, the great tenor player, alto player. Again, not a record I've ever had a chance to grab before. It was part of a store that had some other stuff I wanted, so I bundled this in, got it for a pretty fair price. So I'm filling in pieces still to my discographies, you know. I have the 7000 series finished up into the 7300s, and I have the 8200 New Jazz series pretty far collected. I have probably 70 of the first 90 titles. But there's a few pieces in there I'm still looking for, and these were two of them. Also on Prestige, in my research, I heard about this Jimmy Forrest Miles Davis session from Live at the Barrel from 1960-61, and this came up in one of the stores I was looking at, and I was like, you know what? Sorry, 52. Pardon me, it was much earlier than that. I was thinking of the sax player from VJ who shows up with Miles briefly in 61. This is from 52. So very early in Miles' career, him and Jimmy Forrest are playing together, and it's a nice little session. And then I also got this Brother Jack McDuff record, Soul Circle. This is from 75, 67. I probably got 25 Jack McDuff records on Prestige, and the stuff that gets after 7400, there's more and more titles I'm missing, and I'm slowly filling that in as well. So that's Prestige. Now we're going to look at Verve. I have a few things coming. In fact, I have one package lost in the mail. That's 3 really cool old Verve, Sweets Edison, one's a Lester Young record. They've been lost in the mail for over 2 weeks. I've been trying to hold off on doing this till I got them, but I'll just show them to you next time I do this, I guess. But I got these 2 Basie records, and they're both on Clef, which of course predates Verve. Norman Granz was putting out a lot of great stuff on 10 inches, and when he starts launching the 12-inch era, he moves a lot of the stuff over to the Verve imprint, and it gets reissued there with new covers. But this is Clef 706 and Clef 633. Puts them probably both 54, 55 era, and it's outstanding stuff. You know, Basie is such an architect of the music. His bands house most of the modern players that are to come. I also grabbed a few Dizzy Gillespie records. He's got quite a bit of stuff on Verve. These are from 81-74 and 83-94. So probably about 56 and probably about 58. These two LPs come from. I love Dizzy's stuff. He's working with big bands a lot at this point. And Dizzy was also one of the guys that truly houses just a phenomenal array of musicians. Leo Wright, Lalo Schifrin's early appearance, Art Davis, Chuck Lampkin, Ernie Royal, Clark Terry, Joe Wilder, Gunther Schuller, Julius Watkins, Irby Green, Frank Rehak, Paul Faliz, Don Butterfield, Candido. It's a pretty amazing group, and all the young kids come through Dizzy's band at one time because Dizzy was one of the great teachers. Some other fantastic stuff I've been grabbing on Verve here, and I want to show you this Parker. The first 10 albums on Parker on Verve 8000 series are Parker stuff. This was 8007 Cole Porter stuff. I never had that one. You probably saw this in the SAG series if you watched Ben Webster meets Oscar Peterson. I grabbed this recently. This is just a weird collection I've never seen before. The Anatomy of Improvisation, Dizzy, Roy Eldridge, Hodges, Parker. Pretty amazing stuff. It's just a collection, but not something you see a lot of from Verve. It doesn't even really look like Verve's art department. This is featuring the work of the 10 great jazz soloists as analyzed in Leonard Feather's The Book of Jazz. So it's got a pretty interesting pedigree to it. It's 82-39. It looks like, if my eyes aren't denying me there. Yeah, my eyes aren't what they used to be. But it's a cool piece, cool find. A real treasure was this. This is one of the ones I was looking for, was this Illinois Jacquet. I was hoping to get this before my episode on him, but that didn't work out that way. The mail is a little bit affected by what's going on. This was also in my SAC series, Coleman Hawkins, Ben Webster, an amazing, beautiful record from 58, maybe 57. And then this is Flip Phillips with Howard McGee and Benny Green. My buddy Scott Baldwin recommended him to me as a white sax player that I omitted from my series. And I can tell you I don't know too much about Flip. He obviously makes some pretty important recordings here in the 40s and early 50s with a lot of the Norman Granz guys. So he's got a pretty solid pedigree, no question about it. This is Dixieland, Jonah Jones, Jack Teagarden. It looks like it's from two earlier sessions. It was kind of coupled together here. I didn't realize that until I got it. I thought it was a United record. But Jonah Jones playing with Irby Green, O.C. Johnson, Milt Hinton, Ken Kersey, and George Clark on tenor sax. Then Jack Teagarden playing with Jimmy McPartland, Walter Page, Joe Jones. So interesting stuff on Bethlehem. This is from probably around the time Bethlehem sells to King, 6042. So my guess is these are actually King recordings, given the Bethlehem logo to sell in the market. ABC, this is another record I bought because of my sax series, was this Buddy Collette. I've been a real fan of Buddy Collette. I learned a lot about him in my session. He's a really important guy, not just for his playing, but also for his innovation as a black man. He opened a lot of doors. He works in Hollywood. He does a lot of things that most black careers weren't so lucky to do. And so he plays with Chico Hamilton a long time, which is kind of where I knew him from. But Buddy Collette, in and of his own right, is a really important name and a guy that we should all pay more attention to. And he's a great player. He plays flute, clarinet. I think he dabbles in the oboe. He plays, of course, plays the sax. This is on the ABC before Impulse was launched, number 178. ABC has some really solid titles in the late 50s before Impulse comes around. Creed Taylor is a part of a lot of this stuff at this point. I picked up another Basie record. This is one of his small groups, the Count Basie 7. And I have a later MCA issuing of this, but one of the stores I bought from had this for $8 or something. So I grabbed an old pressing of it. It's always fun to have original impulses. AS15. So I grabbed it, you know, it's old Basie, old impulse. It's going to swing and swing hard. And I think the group's pretty outstanding. You got Eric Dixon and Frank West, Frank Foster, Sonny Payne, Ed Jones, Thad Jones, Freddie Green, and Count Basie. That's nobility, jazz nobility. And these small group Basie recordings are outstanding, outstanding stuff. Highly recommend it. Really solid. Like I said, Basie doesn't get the credit it deserves, as that $1.75 sticker there would have us realize. People don't respect Basie. They don't recognize how much of the tree he's responsible for. And over time, my respect for him has grown, and I see him as equal to Ellington for different reasons. I picked up 3 early Jubilee records. I do like the Jubilee label a lot. We're going to see in 1958 their pinnacle. They do 8 records in 58 that are important parts of the jazz canon. It's their greatest year by far, Jubilee. These are going to be all before that. And rather anonymous stuff. The Piano Adventures of Joe Harnell and his trio. It's a Burt Goldblatt cover, which of course makes it worthwhile in and of itself. I love Goldblatt's art direction. This is the Spring Street Stompers, number 1002, making it the second Jubilee record ever, and I have the first one as well. These are the early kind of records I'm filling in the Jubilee discography, getting to know the history. And this is number 1010, Conrad Janison's Tailgate 5. It's a record I have already with a different cover. And this one has a label I've never seen on Jubilee before. Kind of a black and silver, black and more of a gold actually logo. It says long, I don't see stereo on it, so it must be a mono. It's an interesting cover. So those are just a couple interesting early Jubilee pieces, just to help me kind of get to know that label even better. I picked up 3 records on Epic. I'm a big fan of the rhythm section, with Hank Jones, Barry Galbraith, Milt Hinton, and O.C. Johnson. This record is that group with fantastic horn players attached. So you got Hank Jones, Conte Condoli, Milt Hinton, Sahib Shihab, Barry Galbraith, Jimmy Cleveland, Gene Quill, Ray Bryant. All these guys are sitting in with these guys, and it's a really great session on the Epic label. This is also kind of the same thing, Rhythm Plus One, the rhythm section, and they're adding great horn players to each song, and I was pretty impressed by that record. And this is a Lionel Hampton record from probably 54, 55 on Epic. And Epic is a subsidiary of Columbia, so it's a big label, but it didn't have quite the same distribution or volume of stuff printed from what I can tell, in part because Epic records are always more expensive than their Columbia counterparts. So I'm guessing they weren't printed very well. The Dave Bailey records go for big bucks. So there can't be that many of them out there. I'm guessing if they were on Columbia, they wouldn't go for half as much. But we learned in our sax series how much of a training ground the great Lionel Hampton was. And so it felt like a worthwhile record to pick up for a few bucks. And I also like how Milt Hampton grunts a lot while he's playing. He's got a lot of talking, and he's very vocal fella while he's playing. This is Ray Bryant, Groove House. The great Ray Bryant. We did an episode on him not too long ago. One of the great rhythm piano players. He got some soul R&B edge to him. He really knows how to kick down a solid piano groove. He does some records on the Sue label, And I can honestly tell you, I don't know much about the Sue label. I think it's out of the Midwest somewhere. No, it says it's printed in New York. Broadway, New York, 1650. So it is a New York label. And I don't have a lot on the Sue record label. I've probably passed this up a few times just because I didn't know the label. But I love Ray Bryant. And again, I had a chance to grab it for pretty cheap. So thus I did. Billy Mitchell, another guy from the Sax series, had these two records on Smash as a leader. And Smash isn't really a jazz label. It's more of an R&B label. It's got some country, if I recall. It's a pretty interesting. I think it's affiliated with King out of Cincinnati somehow. But maybe it's associated with Mercury, it looks like. Division of Mercury Records, sorry. I didn't realize that. Yeah. So these are associated with Mercury. And that makes them Chicago. So I was pretty happy to get both of these from two separate sellers. This one can be very expensive with Thad Jones, but I found them both for a pretty fair price. Pretty excited about that. Moving on to Argo. I picked up the record we're listening to, this Pinky Winters record. Those who've been following me for any length of time know I've been looking for this record for 2+ years. Never had a chance to bid on it, and finally one showed up for $1,800. I'm like, man, that's not gonna be my range anytime soon. And so Fresh Sound out of Spain has reissued it. Most of them are in Japan. Even those go for $100 plus shipping. I found one in Europe finally that popped up last month. I think I paid $30 for it, and that's about. And to be honest, it's a better record than I thought it was going to be. And I probably would have paid a little more for it, knowing how good it is. But all the same, I held out and got it for a pretty good price. I think I got it out of Sweden, if I remember. So, Pinky Winters, great stuff. Very lacy, bluesy, light. She's soft but sincere. You know, she's not a big brooding blues singer, jazz singer. She's soft and delicate, but it all feels very genuine. Also on Argo, I got a stereo copy of the Sandy Mossy record. All I had was a Fresh Sounds Spanish version of this. I had a chance to get an original for $5, and I did. Great record. And then this is also something that I think this is the last Emercy record I needed in the first 100. From 36,000 to 36099. I had everything except for this compilation. Today is Bargain Day, a collection of all-star high-fidelity recordings. And it's got the hustle and bustle of an urban environment. And it's got some great artists on there: Mulligan, Patti Page, Georgie Auld, Max Roach, and Clifford Brown, Errol Garner, Sarah Vaughan, Cannonball Adderley, Terry Gibbs, Maynard Ferguson, Helen Merrill. So it's just a great collection of stuff coming out on the Emercy label from 55, 56 era. December 36087. Probably came out in about 58. And for those who don't know, Emercy in that first 100 records probably has 15, 18 compilations. A lot of them. Some are instrument kind of oriented. Some are more like songs for lovers, the blues, trumpets. There's all these different things. But this was just more of a random compilation. And I like the cover. It's great. Great Chicago jazz. Also on Emercy, Mercury, the Wing label, is this great Louis Jordan record. We talked about him a great deal in the Sax series. A very influential guy. One of the guys that kills the big bands. He uses a small group and makes a whole whale of noise. And it made it really hard for the big bands to pay a big group. Unaffordable. On Chess, I picked up a record I've always wanted to have. Guitar Will Travel by Bo Diddley. It was part of a cellar store, and I don't really shop for blues and early rock like this, but when it was a small store, I was just browsing what they had, and it's a record I've always wanted. I got a lot of his early Chess stuff. I didn't have this one. The cover is fantastic, so I grabbed that. Again, Chicago black music is always worth having. And then I stumbled on these two VJ records. Number 1004 And I don't know what the number on this one is. 1072. And they start the 1000 series, VJ does. And then they quickly move the jazz artists to the 3000 series. And rock and pop and blues continues in the 1000 series. But this 1004 comes in the jazz lineage. And it's great stuff. Early Jimmy Reed. One of the great blues players of the era. I'm a big fan of Jimmy Reed. Like I said, it was just one of those things where I'm like, I can't believe the seller has this. And the price was reasonable. The price wasn't out of this world. And you get a chance to buy an old Jimmy Reed record, you better take advantage of that. And you better grab it when you have the chance. And so I was happy to grab those two fantastic Jimmy Reed records on VJ. And what a different era this was. You know, record labels putting out blues, pop, rock, gospel, jazz, all on the same imprints. Really cool finds as far as I'm concerned. Figured I'd show those to you. Now I want to move on to some West Coast stuff here. I've already shown you some of it, so we'll skim through it rather quickly, if that's okay with you guys. I think I showed you this Fantasy 10-inch Nat Pierce. This is Woody Herman associated stuff. Dick Collins on the trumpet. Great stuff. I just got this in the mail today on the Fantasy label. Bud Powell, Charlie Mingus, and Max Roach. It's on the blue vinyl, which generally means it's stereo. Doesn't sell. Yep, stereo. I believe this comes in the debut part of the debut series, and of course was reissued as part of the Fantasy label later on. But this is an old pressing with the blue vinyl, with Bud Powell, Max Roach, and Charlie Mingus. And one should never pass up the chance to get old records like this. You can hear that just shuffles along. You know what I mean? There's power in that vehicle towards the shore. Powell. Powell's a workhorse, man. He's a giant among men. I showed you this one. Another Buddy Collette record. This was on the Dig label. Really cool cover. Tough to find. I grabbed 3 contemporary records. Phineas Newborn, which I showed you already. Frank Morgan, which I showed you already. Then I got this Teddy Edwards record, again from the Sax series. I realized there was a couple Teddy Edwards records I needed to have. So it was this one, Teddy's Ready, contemporary. This looks like it's an import. It's somewhere in the 3500 series, 35, 64, something like that. I figured I'd better grab it. And then I also got this Teddy Edwards record on Pacific. And he doesn't do a lot of Pacific. Most of his stuff's on contemporary. But this is a great record with Vinegar, Joe Castro, Ben Tucker. Really worth finding. Sunset Eyes. And I should have had that in my Sax series, but it wasn't to be. This is Bud Shank, Holiday in Brazil. Bud Shank, of course, was working with Laurindo Almeida, and an early progenitor of the Bossa Nova sound. This is World Pacific 1259. Puts it probably about 1958. Interesting cover. I actually haven't had a chance to listen to it. It just came in the mail today. I don't see the band listed. But it's arrangements by Laurindo Almeida with Bud Shank on the alto and the flute, sorry. I'll give this a listen, maybe let you know something about it later. I got this Lee Konitz, plays with Jerry Mulligan. It's from that weird 400 sequence on Pacific, and it was originally a 10-inch, and it came out in the 12-inch format here in Bobby 57. Kind of a cool cover. I got this Keister Parade record. with Richie Kamuka, Cy Tooth, Johnny Mandel, Harry Sweets Edison, and Leroy Vinegar. Great stuff. The Keister Parade. Never had a chance to grab that one before, so I figured I'd pick it up. Also on Pacific, I got this Master Sounds record, which I already showed you. So I just added 5 more Pacific records. Most of these labels I have well over 100 titles already. I showed you this Hi-Fi Jazz record with Ben Webster, Jerry Mulligan, and Jimmy Witherspoon. And then on the G&P label, we already talked about these. The Francis Faye, again, LA stuff. This is a great compilation, great condition. Then the Frank Morgan record, which I got for the Sax series. It actually showed up on time. I've showed you this several times with the red vinyl. Seems like the West Coast labels dabbled in colored vinyl a lot more. Pacific does it. G&P does it. Fantasy does it. I showed you the Stan Kenton record on Capitol. I think I showed you the Chico Hamilton record on Warner Brothers. I'm just going to show you some kind of random stuff. Let Me Love You by Morgana King. She's a great bluesy singer. I have some of her stuff on MRC. This is one of those records where I wanted to bundle a few things from a seller to try to get my shipping and my costs down. And this guy was willing to sell me that for a good price. So I was happy to grab it. Beautiful. It's on the United Artists label. And I'm not sure if that's the United Artists. It looks like it is. But it's not the normal logo for sure. It's an interesting center logo. The logos on the jacket are different. So I'm guessing it's probably because it's from a vocal series and not the main jazz sequences that are on United Artists. I got a few things on Decca. And Decca's not a great jazz label. They probably were more of a jazz label in the 78 era. But by the 50s, they're kind of moving out of the jazz world. There's a great Al Hibbler record, the great singer who featured in Ellington's group for a long time. I got the Sal Salvador record on Decca. I'm a big fan of Sal Salvador's records on Bethlehem. And this is a jazz studio from Hollywood #2. Just a wide mix of guys throwing down in the Decca studios. So 3 Decca records, that's a lot of Decca stuff for me to add. Well, this is Herbie Harper, the trombone player, who has a great 10-inch on Bethlehem. He's a fiery little trombonist. Here he is on Liberty label with Bud Shank, Bob Gordon. It's actually a pretty serious West Coast group on this record. Harry Babison's on the bass, Marty Pych on the piano, Roy Hart's on the drums, Bob Gordon on the baritone, Jimmy Rowell shows up. Solid stuff. Moving to RCA, I realized doing my vibraphone series 3 months ago that I had nothing by Gary Burton. I wasn't buying records at that point, but as I bought stuff in July, I got a couple Gary Burton records on the RCA label. This is a Sonny Rollins, which made that, and Clark Terry as well. That made that a pretty easy one to want to grab. And then this one's New Vibe Man in Town, both from the early 60s on RCA. And this is on the Vic label. And Vic, if you recall, is an affiliate of RCA. And this is the Hawk in Paris, Coleman Hawkins with Manny Alban. I'm guessing RCA probably licensed this from a Vogue or some label in Paris. I'm not sure on that, but being that it was recorded in Paris, although it says Ranger Cut by Manny Alban recorded at Webster Hall in New York. The Hawk in Paris. Why does it say it was recorded in New York? Of course, he lived in Paris for a long time. It looks like these songs are all about Paris. Paris in the spring, April in Paris, Under Paris Skies, La Chouffe, La Vie en Rose, Mademoiselle de Paris. So maybe they're just doing French-themed songs on this. But it's great Coleman Hawkins, great Manny Alban arrangements. And Coleman's always worth having. Like an Armstrong, like a Parker, you put him in any setting, he's gonna kick fire up. It's just what he does, you know. So that's a cool find. Cute little gal on the cover, never hurts, and she's hanging out with the hawk. Because you know how gals love their birds of prey. So I'm gonna slide back in there, annoyingly enough. Almost done here. I finally got the Sinatra at the Sands record with Count Basie. It's a record I've wanted to have for a while. It actually usually goes for 15-20 bucks, which is more than I like to spend for Basie. I found this from a seller for $5. Filled that in. A guy I heard about kind of through my saxophone series, but didn't know much about, was Big J McNeely. He's more in the R&B, Louis Jordan, King, Curtis kind of vein. It's on Imperial. It's just a reissue, but it was a cool find. Edward Peterson, this is on Delmark. And my friend Scott Baldwin telling me to grab anything I find on Delmark. So I picked it up. I haven't listened to it yet, to be honest. Almost done here. Max Roach, again, Volume 1. This is on a weird little French label. It's just a live recording, but it was not that expensive, so I grabbed it. This is a Roulette Emis budget label version of Joe Williams Sings with Lambert, Basie, and Ross. They're basically doing Basie with Basie this time. Great stuff. I picked up 3 records on Concord. My friend Jean-Michel has turned me on to Concord, and it is great traditional jazz being recorded. This is Attila Zoller first, Gypsy Cry on the Embryo label. The great Hungarian guitar player, kind of, I believe he was kind of a rival of Gabor Szabo and even Joe Zawinul. Austria, he lived in Austria a long time. My friend Wolfgang Pointner was taught by Attila Zoller. He's a great guitar player. I only listened to part of this so far, but it's really great stuff. Especially if you like Django, if you like Gabor Szabo. He's a great guitar player. Here's 3 Concord records I grabbed. The LA 4, which of course is Ray Brown, Lorinda Almeida, Bud Shank, and Jeff Hamilton. I grabbed this After You've Gone with Herb Ellis, Ray Brown, Harry Sweets Edison, Jake Hanna. And then I grabbed the Gene Harris All-Star Big Band tribute to Count Basie. Anything with Gene Harris on it, I'm just going to be game for that for now. And the last thing I want to show you today is this Dial Count Basie Charlie Parker box set. It's his Dial recordings from '47. He's playing with a lot of greats at the time: Lucky Thompson, Howard McGee, J.J. Johnson, Miles Davis, Wardell Gray, Errol Garner, Dodo Marmarosa, Duke Jordan, Tommy Potter, Max Roach, to name a few. So some pretty legendary sessions. It includes all the alternate takes. It's a nice 6 LP box set. I got that for $40. I couldn't say no to having Parker's Dial works. So that's the stuff I've collected in the month of July for my birthday. I wanted to pick up some new stuff, fill in a few gaps. And that's one of the things that learning does. Learning tells you, like, oh shit, I don't have that. I need that. I need to find that. I do got about 5 more packages coming. I'll show those to you when they get here. I got 2 Booker Irvin records coming that I've wanted for a long time. And I finally said I can't go any longer without having them. The Trance and Heavy. I got a few other really cool things in the mail coming. I'll show them to you as they come. But that's some of the recent arrivals I've got. Filling in labels, filling in artist discographies. You know, it's as big as my collection is, there's always pieces you don't got. And the more you pick and fill in, the more information you got. The more you know what the average is, the more you know what's special, what's dynamic, what's extraordinary. You know, you got to know a lot of the bulk of the body of the music to hear the innovation, to hear the remarkable direction change that happened at this label at this time. You got to have the bodies of all the labels work to really get a full grasp on the times and the era and where innovation was coming from and who was driving it, who propelled it further, who stifled it. All the label stories will tell us all that stuff. So knowing the labels and buying stuff by record label, to me, is a worthwhile endeavor if you want to have a broad knowledge base. If you're just buying by artist, it kind of leaves you in a vacuum. It kind of leaves you without the whole picture. And if you just know Miles and Train and a few artists here and there, you don't really have an understanding of what made any record special in the first place. And none of it's bad. As anonymous as a record on Argo might be, it's not going to be bad. I've said it many times. You don't get to cut tape in 1955, 56, 63 unless you were a great player. Tape and studio time cost too much. It wasn't like today where any digital guy could press play on a phone, record himself, and put it out. You had to be special to get recording time in the 50s and 60s. And all the guys that play on all those great jazz labels were all great players, whether or not they're forgotten, whether or not you know about them. You get a chance to buy an old Argo, an old Emersy, an old VJ, and the price is right, it's worth always buying it, because you'll learn something. And maybe that's not what you're here to do. Maybe you just want to know Miles Davis, and that's it. You want to have a few big names in jazz, trying to get to know his discographies. But for me, I'm trying to be the archaeologist. I'm trying to get to know the picture, get to know the culture, get to know the dynamics. Hopefully understand why the walls fell eventually and why the city failed. Archaeology is a deep study looking into a people, and jazz requires that viewpoint at times. It doesn't have to be how you look at it, but it's how I look at it. So I'm a Jazz Shepherd. I appreciate you all. Drink your coffee, enjoy your weekend. 1958's coming, and 1958 is a banger. It's the real deal. Kenny Dorham, ABC Records. Don't skip over ABC stuff. All these great labels had a lot of great stuff being recorded. Y'all be safe. Peace.